Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Now, originally I wanted to talk about Kino Loy or do a deep dive into Luthen Rael's speech because, honestly, they were terrific. But today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about the entire Andor series as a whole. Now, I usually don't review TV shows until, they completely end. But episode 10 moved me in such a profound way that I figured I'd better just get all of these thoughts out of my head before I completely forget them, which happens a lot. Brain damage. Now, ever since Disney took over Star Wars, there have been non-stop arguments amongst the fans about all sorts of crazy things. There have been endless debates over what characters should do and how they should do it, with which characters and in which positions and on which planets. I admittedly have also gotten into the fray as well. I am not innocent. But it's all becoming a little bit ridiculous, especially now that people are attacking each other personally over the internet and just taking things to the next level. And that's the beauty and horror of Star Wars fandom. It's so beloved that we begin to create identities for ourselves around Star Wars, begin to claim ownership of the stories through our own unique interpretations of the lore. It's the kind of engagement that I imagine every creator or religious leader would love to have for their own work. For me personally, Star Wars has always been a gigantic playground full of endless worlds and adventures that one can escape to when the mundane reality of life begins to drag you down. When I was a young kid, hating school, hating the new town that I moved to, I remember how the Knights of the Old Republic turned the boring, mundane basement in my parents' house into the Undercity of Taurus. I checked out the illegal swoop race circuits. I infiltrated spice-running gangs. I even fought the Rakghoul plague. These were amazing experiences, brilliant adventures that a kid like me could never realistically have, because in our world we have, like laws that prevent us from giving lightsabers to children because, war crimes.
You want a real test?
Name it.
Again.
But then when I finally became an adult, legally speaking, I kept all of those childish dreams from my favorite sci-fi franchise as a kid, and I took every opportunity I could to see the world and live out those adventures. I mean, for years, I made less than minimum wage as a videographer. It is a cutthroat industry, and I am not that skilled or ambitious. But every opportunity I had to travel, to shoot a documentary abroad, I would take for half pay. Sometimes I would do it for free, just for the flight. Ticket getting paid for me, and by doing so, I was able to experience some truly amazing things. I saw stuff that would forever change my views of the world and my appreciation for humanity. And in retrospect, I owe a lot of that to the creator of Star Wars himself, George Lucas. Now, in 2005 at Star Wars Celebration, he said the following. It's one of my favorite quotes from him. "Don't let Star Wars take over your lives. The point of the movie is to get on with your lives, to take the challenge, to leave your uncle's moisture farm and go out into the world, change it, and save the universe." Now, obviously, I want you guys to be invested in all the little minute details of Star Wars so you can watch my videos about how X-Wings work so I can get ad revenue. But in all honesty, when I started this channel, I took these words to heart. This is why I always try to connect what happens in Star Wars with the real life. With real life? With real life. I want people to know that Star Wars isn't an escape. It's actually just the beginning of your own adventure, should you choose to take that leap. Now, a lot of people will be like, "Hey, Alan, I don't have money, or I don't have experience, I don't have intelligence, I don't have legs." But those are kind of all excuses. A lot of people claim that Andor is not Star Wars because it lacks the starfighters, the epic duels with lightsabers, all the things that we've grown to know and love. But that's just one layer of Star Wars. It's what I like to call the wow of Star Wars. There's another deeper layer, and that is the wisdom that George Lucas is trying to impart to everyone.
Yeah.
I love cars, I love going fast.
Going fast.
So I like spaceships.
Yeah.
But it isn't the science, aliens, and all that kind of stuff that I get focused on. It's the how do the people react to all those things? And
Yeah.
how do they accommodate them?
Yeah.
So that's the part that really fascinates me. And
I mean, the other half of George Lucas is not this profound, wise individual. He's a terrific businessman, and he's pretty cutthroat in a lot of ways. And so he understood that all the, young boys out there, like you and me, we love cars, we love motorcycles. Of course we're gonna love X-Wings and Star Destroyers, but that's the hook. That's what pulls us into the larger story that's being told, the story that's really about us, about the human experience and how we deal with adversity and challenges.
science fiction, you got two branches. One is science,
Yeah.
and the other is social.
Right.
I'm much more of the 1984 kind of guy.
Now, George Lucas studied anthropology in college. It is the study of man, how we interact with each other, how we build societies and culture. And of course, when we talk about societies, we also have to talk about politics, which is another layer of Star Wars that Lucas
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
really loves delving into. But let's refocus, actually. Let's just talk about the individual aspect, the challenges that we face in our life. If you take a look at Andor, it has an incredibly strong theme that has slowly been growing throughout the entire series, and that is the awakening of the individual, the hero's call. It's the same exact journey that Luke Skywalker went on all those years back on Tatooine. Cassian Andor's Tatooine is not a location or a place, it's actually a mindset. All his life, he's been restricted by one thing.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly we're starting not to notice.
The Empire, in a more literal term, is just an authoritarian government. But as far as story elements goes, it's just the big bad. It's the thing that prevents Andor from having the freedom, the liberty, the joy that he really wants in life. It's the thing that's keeping him from living on that beach on Nymos. The Empire has taken everything from Andor, his childhood, his father, his ability to live a normal life, and in every direction he tries to run, he encounters that same Empire. The Force actually has a presence in Andor, just like it has a presence in Rogue One, despite there being no Jedi or Sith. The way that this branch of Star Wars does the Force is extremely subtle. In the Andor series, the Cosmic Force continues to push Andor towards conflict with the Empire. That encounter he has with the Shore Trooper, yes, it's a criticism of the militarized police state at one level, but at another level, it represents the fact that Andor will not be able to continue running away from his responsibilities, and he will eventually have to face the Empire. He has no choice in the matter because evil and negativity, it's something we will all encounter one day, and there's nothing we can do but to stand up against it and fight it or be overwhelmed by it. For Luke, it was the arrival of the Imperial-class Star Destroyer known as the Devastator that sparked his own journey in life. In the first few episodes, Andor is continuously on the run, not only from the Empire, but from the responsibilities that a person with his skills has to the galaxy, to society. Just like how the galaxy needed Luke Skywalker and his Force abilities, the Rebellion needed people like Andor because the side effect of his terrible life of nonstop tragedy is that it turned him into a survivor, an unstoppable force that understands how to stay afloat and fit in no matter what situation he finds himself in. But Andor, like Luke, like me, like a lot of you guys out there, has lost confidence in himself. He no longer understands just how capable he is. It happens to all of us. When life constantly hands you losses and defeats and negativity or just death, when everything is negative around you, even if it's not your fault, it's very easy to start seeing your own weaknesses, to start highlighting them and feeling helpless. Instead of focusing on your strengths, you start to believe that you're not capable of doing anything.
You came in as a cook. You lived because you ran.
I mean, this afflicts everyone at one point in their life. And in my own short life, I've interviewed a lot of impressive, talented people, far smarter, far more successful than I could ever dream of. And the one determining factor of success that I've seen is not whether you've inherited a lot of money or not, although that does help, or what your education is, or what school you went to, what degree you have. It's really all about your mindset, how confident you are in yourself, how good you are at learning from failure and getting up time and time again when you do fail. That is the one thing that separates unsuccessful people and successful people, and that is the belief in self. And sometimes all it takes to remind us of who we are is an outsider, another perspective that can say, hey, you're actually good at some things, and you should focus more on that instead of the negatives. In Luke's case, that individual was Obi-Wan Kenobi. In Andor's, it was Luthen Rael.
I didn't risk my ass for the Starbeth unit. I came for you.
He uses every trick in the book to inspire Andor to come out of hiding. First it's money, then it's the threat of the Corpo Hounds rushing to arrest him.
I know you killed 2 corpos at Molana 1. I know they're coming for you. So you flex out your ways to let them have you. Waste of talent.
But what Luthen Rael really wants to do is ignite a flame in Andor's heart. He wants him to come to a realization that all his life, the Empire slowly squeezed the life and joy out of him, and now it was time for him to finally take action.
So what I'm asking is this. Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real, then carve off useless pieces till there's nothing left.
Luthen Rael wants Andor to leave his moisture farm, go out and explore the world, find his true potential. When Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star in his dingy little T-65B X-Wing, he inspired millions to join the rebel cause and resist the Empire. He brought together the various warring factions of the rebellion into one cohesive unit. When Andor arrives on Aldhani, he brings hope to the raid team. Well, not at first, at least. But his experience and his understanding of what they're about to do makes sure that the mission succeeds, leading to the public order and resentencing directive, which will fan the early flames of revolution. And when Andor arrives on Narkina 5, he finds Kino Loy, Jembach, many other prisoners trapped like Luke was on Tatooine, like I was in my basement as a kid, and he inspires them with the words of his mentor.
Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real, then carve off useless pieces till there's nothing left?
This idea that Luthen Rael passed on to Andor, who then passed it on to Kino Loy, who then passed it on to the entire prison, was an infectious virus.
I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want.
I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want.
It's a message that is what Star Wars is about at its core. It's very meta, actually. And, you know, after seeing all of those prisoners escape and get out of there, the sense of relief and joy I felt was ridiculous. I mean, that's why I'm doing this video in the first place. It was that powerful. And this is because of what Tony Gilroy's team excels at in Andor, something that he does better than Lucas himself, and that is developing characters on screen.
But one of the biggest problems you have in science fiction with movies, they don't have it in books or anything, but in movies, you have to create a real world.
Yeah.
And it's a real world that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And you have to do what Kurosawa used to say is, it has to have immaculate reality.
Yeah.
Even though it's not
I like
real.
that term.
Now, a lot of people think Andor is slow, but it actually is just subtle. Every word spoken, every action is meaningful. There's no filler or fluff in the dialogue. Everything we see of Kino Loy, Jembach, Zal, Ulaf, Taga, Ham, and Melshi is designed to make them more relatable, more human, so that the horrific experiences they go through are even more painful to watch for the audience. In this day and age where we are just bombarded on our phones with death, destruction, all sorts of crazy chaos, we've become desensitized to all of this violence and death. But in Andor, Tony Gilroy tries to fight this trend by making the loss of every individual life feel impactful.
He's not breathing.
No.
Furlough! Furlough! He's taking! He's up! Furlough!
Every one of these deaths are supposed to move the audience, and it's not because there's a lot of dramatic long death scenes with accompanying music. I mean, some of these deaths are abrupt and come out of nowhere. Some happen in the background or on the corner of the screen. What makes these deaths impactful is not the final moment itself, but all the care that was placed into introducing us these characters and the moments leading up to that death. Understand any human being enough and you'll learn either to love them as they love themselves, or you'll learn to pity them for what the world has turned them into. Andor does something remarkable. It's attempting to make us care once again, to make us feel for the suffering of other people by showing us the stories of otherwise background characters in a normal Star Wars film. But no, in Andor, we get to learn everything about everyone. And the people who say that this dialogue is not important, that it's filler, it's unfortunately just a sign of, you know, the consumption habits that we have now with media. We consume so much. We have entire seasons of Netflix on TV that we will watch within a week. You're telling me that doesn't affect your ability to see things as they really are? I think it's remarkable that Andor has the ability to make us feel for these characters so much that their absence on this screen moves us. You know, Star Wars can be about fantasy. It can be about escaping into a realm where you can use the Force, shoot Sith lightning into people's faces. I do that all the time. But again, that is only one layer, the simpler layer of what Star Wars actually is. And if you truly love Star Wars, if you truly love the message that's there, you gotta dig deep. The thing that's disappointed me the most out of all of the arguments between fans is when I see people from my generation, the kids who grew up with the prequels, you know, hating and yelling and screaming at young kids for, I don't know, liking the sequels or the High Republic or whatever. I mean, don't you guys remember when the prequels came out, what the older trilogy fans, the original trilogy fans said to us? They tried to make us feel silly for watching something that they disapproved of because they found it childish. Tried to take us away from the things that we loved for reasons we didn't understand. I mean, ultimately, these guys disapproved of the prequels because it didn't really match up with their own childhood or their own nostalgia or their own first experience with Star Wars, and they felt attacked because of it. Are we, as a generation, going to pass down the same hatred and just stupidity to the younger generation to traumatize them so they can do the same thing to younger generations? Or can we break this cycle of bullshit, you know? I might not really like the sequels that much. I think they're objectively just not very good films. But they said the same thing about the prequels, if you think about it. I mean, and they are objectively not the best made films. The prequels have terrible dialogue in them, but I love them still because I was a kid when I watched them. But as a grown adult, I am not going to go around attacking young girls and young boys who happen to see themselves in the characters of the sequels or the High Republic. The thing is, if you were a kid when the prequels came out, you're now an old person. You're an adult. And this is what being an adult feels like. It can be scary, it can be terrifying because things start to move really quickly and they become scary. And, you know, as a result, we oftentimes shut down. We become more closed-minded. We don't seek to find new things. We just go back to what we know. I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to do. And if you want to do that, that is fine. But do not take the joy of Star Wars from future generations. Yeah, you know, eventually in 10 years from now, there are going to be kids who love the sequels. As surprising as that might sound to you and me, but there are going to be kids who really love the sequels, especially if they continue making more content for the sequels. You know, sure, it might not be as popular as the prequel crowd because, you know, I'm biased about that, but it might happen. And so you got to really think about it before you post some toxic bullshit onto a forum or a comment. That could be a 10-year-old that's listening to what you're saying. And is that really what you want to be doing with your time? Because Star Wars has always been for everyone. You know, for me, it's about getting people out of their basements. That's how I see Star Wars. For other people, it might be the lightsabers, the TIE fighters. That's fine. But what Star Wars is not, it's not about preventing other people from enjoying Star Wars. That is complete nonsense.